The rabbis, the Sanhedrin has decided that they're going to get back to the original calendar, to the original new year that Yahweh ordained, but they're not necessarily going in the right direction. And I wanted to talk about this, right? Because many people celebrated quote unquote Jewish New Year. But in my opinion, there's nothing really Jewish about it because Yahweh defines what the new year is in the Torah and the Tanakh. And if people just pried it open, they'd see that a lot of what these people are teaching is not true. That's why Yeshua said in Matthew 23 16. To avoid the leaven of the Pharisees and the Sadducees, so to watch for the legalism and for the traditions. And when he told his disciples this, they were like, what do you mean, leaven? And he said, well, when I say leaven, I'm speaking of doctrine. And one of the major doctrines of Judaism is that around the fall season, the new year starts. Now, the idea of the Jewish New Year is, well, we take the genealogy in the Bible and we look at Adam and we add up all the numbers and then we get to the present day. And the year right now, right, would technically be 5785 on their calendar. However, the scripture says that we don't transition into a new year until we've spotted the barley and we see the new moon. So I know I already did a video on the calendar, but I think that this serves as a really important reminder. In Exodus chapter 9 and verse 31, it says, now the flax and the barley were struck, for the barley was in the head and the flax was in bud, but the wheat and the spelt were not struck, for they are late crops. So we see that the barley is coming up towards the end of the winter season when, the hail is coming down on Egypt. This is significant, right? Because in scripture, the new year begins when we have a transition from winter to summer. And the Bible never mentions spring or fall. These are only terms that, men have made. God only says summer and winter. There's a reference to this in Zechariah. There's a reference to this in the Psalms. And there's a reference to this in Genesis chapter 8 and verse 22. There's just the dichotomy of summer and winter. Just for simplicity's sake, let me read Exodus 12:1 and 2, which says, now the Lord spoke to Moses and Aaron in the land of Egypt, saying, this month shall be your beginning of months, Hodesh, and it shall be the first month, Hodesh, of the year to you, which means new moon. So the first new month is the first new moon of the year. So we just covered the fact that there should be no transition to another year until we see the barley and the new moon, and that this idea that, a new year can just happen at the feast of Yom Teruah is completely man-made. Now, I can't tell you how many times I've been told, well, you're too sola scriptura. You just stick too much to scriptures. You don't read the history. You don't read what the rabbis say. Rebbe Joseph said this and this and that. Like, that's not something that I care about. I care what Yahweh says, and I care what scripture says, and he made it very simple, and there are many people, especially in the land, that are trying to complicate it. Now, what's really ironic is that in the Hebrew, other than the first month, which is Abib, none of these months have names. They're just numbers. God, Yahweh, just wants us to count. And you do have 3 months that are named in, Kings. However, one thing that's really important to note is that these months were not named until the Jews came out of Babylonian exile. And the Jews adopted the Babylonian calendar, which included these names of pagan false gods. And one of the names of the months is Tammuz. I mean, that's like literally a dead giveaway as to how pagan the calendar is. Anyways, have fun. Go back, listen to your rabbi or your congregation leader. But just know that I give them all a serial number because I don't have respect for any of them. My rabbi is Yeshua. There is no rabbinic system in the Torah or the Tanakh that was made by men.